Honestly, I can still remember how it felt when I actually got my dream score, right? And the feeling didn't exactly happen when I got the score. It was when I finished the section. I was using the bathroom in between a break, and a couple of my friends were actually taking the test with me because it was an in school SAT, not one that you actually traveled somewhere to take. And I just remember feeling really good about it and telling them, like, that actually went amazing. I did extremely well on all of it. And I felt that it just clicked, right? English was always my worst section. I was never really good at it, and it took me so long to actually see progress. I was practicing it for an extremely long time, but it took me so long to see actually my score go up as a result of it. And on that day of the test, it literally just clicked where I had such a strong confidence about every question I answered, and I knew the practice I had done had paid off. Partly the reason why this happens is you can't properly measure progress in reading. This is how it's going to feel. It's just going to click one day. People online and people that I know have told me that they felt similar about improving their reading score. It just clicks one day, and that's how it happens. This is what it takes to actually get to that point. So hi, I'm Karthik. This is what it takes to score a perfect 800 in English. All right. So first of all, what does it really take? And one of the first questions I get is, how much do I have to practice? How much do I have to do? And this is the wrong mindset. Let me actually tell you how you should actually think and how that new way of thinking is actually going to make you do like less actual work, but get way more results, right? So first of all, when you think like this, right, you're thinking that there's a finite number and that once I hit that number, I'm going to get the score that I want. And that's not how you should think, because that's not at all how reading works. If this was like math, right, and I just had to make you learn the skill and practice it, then you could think like that, right? But this is how you should actually think for reading. As much as possible, right? That's what AMAP means over there. And what you should really think is you want to do as much as possible. You want to do like as much as you can possibly fit into the timeline that you have, right? Because you can't easily measure the progress and you get better through practicing, right? Your own focus shouldn't be how much practice should I have to do to get a perfect score. It's like, I'm going to do as much practice as I possibly can because I can't truly measure where I am. So if I do as much practice as I can, I guarantee I've put in all of my effort that I can possibly do to get a good score. Your volume, right, which is just how much practice you're doing every single day over the course of like all the days that you have to practice, is the metric that you should use to measure your like ability of reading. It's how much volume you've done. So if you do 1 hour a week, whereas another person is doing 2 hours a week, they're doing what you do in 2 weeks in 1 week, right? So the amount that you're practicing is not a good metric, but it's just the volume of your doing within your time frame. Okay. So here's the nature of improving in SAT reading. And the reason why I say that is because it's actually radically different than improving in anything else. It's so different and it's so hard. And that's why it's the hardest section in the SAT, just based on how people score in it in terms of improving, not in terms of how much they actually get. And it's because of this idea of the soft skill. So let me just explain the difference between hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are like things that you easily can measure someone's ability in and know if they have it or not, right? Like you can measure if someone like has a certain thing, right? And how much of it that they have, right? That's a hard skill of that activity, right? But soft skills are more things that you can't really measure, but it's obvious when someone has it and when someone doesn't has it. Like social skills, right? You can't really measure them, but you know that they generally exist, and it's hard to measure improvement in them because it's not linear, right? It doesn't follow a scale. And even though scores are a linear metric, you often will find that your score won't improve even though you actually are improving. And that's why it's so applicable to SAT reading. Treat it like a soft skill. This is why you're not getting better, right? You feel like you're not getting better. The truth is you actually are getting better every time you practice, and you just need to push that amount so high to see the results on SAT reading. But it's why people get demotivated, because they practice for 2 weeks doing intensive work, right? And maybe they're not doing it as effectively as possible, but they're still putting in work. And then they retest and they find that they got the same score or even lower, right? And they feel like they're not getting better and what they're doing is useless. And that's actually just almost like a trick, right? You have to not believe that and understand that practicing is going to make you better. People quit as a result, right? They feel like they're not improving and there's nothing they can do to improve their score because they don't see an improvement in 2 weeks. And that's the wrong way to go about it, right? It becomes very unmotivating seeing that you're not seeing progress very quickly, but it will become motivating as soon as you reach that threshold of effort that it takes to just improve that little bit more, right? So here's how to review. I'm going to do a full breakdown of everything that you should do to get to that point where you have a good score now, but you want to aim to the perfect, right? You should be taking sections daily, right? Reading passages, or if you're taking the DSAT, your individual passages, questions, whatever. You want to be taking full passages for testing purposes, right? Because you need to figure out where you are and what your weak points are and what you're struggling with, right? But this is actually not the most important part. Even though it's extremely important to test and to actually see where you are, this is merely just a diagnosis, right? When you go to the doctor, they diagnose you, but the thing that actually helps you is the medicine that they give you, right? So this is just the diagnosis portion. The actual cure slash medicine is the practice, right? Once you've done that, you need to take a block of time, right? And figure out why your mistake was made, what your mistakes were, why the correct answer is correct, and why your mistake was made, right? Figure out the exact reason, but also you need to figure out why you didn't catch it in the beginning, right? Why you didn't catch that mistake or why you fell for that trap when you were taking the test. And you need to remember your thinking. So it's good to do this like on the same day as you taken it, or a day after, where you still remember all of your reasoning, right? One of the reasons, you could have missed it is like a detail that you missed in the passage. You misinterpreted the passage or the question or one of the answer choices, or you were trying to choose between two really hard ones and you picked one over the other, and one is wrong because one small key detail. It's always one of these generally, right? It's either misinterpretation or a small key detail. And that's what I mean by the discriminating detail. It's something that points out that you missed, but it differentiates one answer from the other. So it immediately makes one correct and immediately makes one wrong, right? Figure that out. And what you need to do is figure out why you didn't catch it in the beginning, right? So going into the next part of review, once you figured out why you didn't catch it in the beginning, right? What the exact mistake was, why you didn't catch it in the beginning, you need to figure out, how am I going to make sure this doesn't happen next time? And this is the most important part. This really improves your score, right? So figure out your strategy to make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? So here are some a not acceptable strategy that I hear all the time is like, read more carefully. I'm going to pay attention to all the details. That is such a weak plan because it doesn't say anything that you're actually going to do. You're just going to repeat the same thing and get the same result, right? I think it's an Einstein quote that says like, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. But that's literally what you're doing if you don't come up with a real reason to improve, right? A real reason to make sure your mistake doesn't happen again. Instead, plan for how you're going to do that. And one example, right? Let's say you missed a key detail in a question and that made you pick the wrong answer. Here's how you're not going to do it next time. Use the pencil tracking strategy. So take your pencil and go over every individual word, and it makes sure that you read the whole thing, right? The pencil does. And it makes sure that you actually read every single word and not mess up the order of words, not skip over a word, and fully understand what it means, right? So force a real strategy that involves real things that you're going to apply next time that you take it. That's going to help you like do it. And it might not help you, right? You might realize that it's useless. Then you need to change your strategy. But before then, the only way that you figure out that it's actually useful is if you actually test that strategy. So many students will make the strategy and it will be a good strategy, but they won't test it again with the regular passage taking, right? They'll just continue going along and not taking a test, because once you've figured out the strategy for the questions that you've missed, you need to go back to the passages that you take regularly and actually do them regularly. Take the passages that like the question was found upon, run it up again, see how you do, right? Run this cycle, right, of like review part 1 and review part 2, these two slides, thousands of times, right? I said as many times as possible. Obviously, I've given you a number there, and you might need way less, or you might need more of like iterations of this process to get you a high score. I guarantee you, run this cycle as much as you possibly can, and you will get to that point where you have a high score, or you've at least significantly improved your score and made a difference from where you are now. I guarantee that if you follow this framework, it will happen. I can actually guarantee that because I've done it. I've used this and it actually works, right? Here's some final thoughts. Belief and effort are the two drivers of your progress here, right? Belief is you believe that it's possible and you know you can do it. And effort is that you're going to try your hardest to make it happen. It's a combination of these two that makes you good, right? You will know, right, that you have done well even before your score comes back, right? I remember this when the story that I told you that I knew I did well as soon as I finished the section, right? I had this strong feeling of confidence that I had aced the section and I had done well, and I knew I had done well, right? You're just going to know. It's so gratifying of a feeling. It's almost a feeling of relief because I don't have to worry about this ever again. I know I've done well, and there's nothing like I really have to worry about, right? It's so gratifying of a feeling, and I really want you to feel that. And the only way to feel it is by doing this framework. And every time you don't feel motivated, visualize this. Visualize the story that I have told you of how I felt. Visualize the idea of, yourself taking the test and doing extremely well and not having to worry about it ever again. Because that is such a gratifying feeling, not only because you have a really good score, but because you have done it, you've done the work and you got the result and you did what you wanted, right? Which was the high score and whatever outcome that it's going to bring. Always visualize that because visualization is such a powerful tool to boost your effort. All right. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you boost your score with this.